President Trump has also said a lot of very insulting things about China, though he was on very good behavior during his meeting with Xi Jinping just now.
His whole political brand was by criticizing China when he came to power.
Accusing China of ripping off the U.S. You didn't say your name.
I didn't say my name? Hello, I'm Kunal Sehgal. Welcome to the first episode of Meanwhile in Asia, a weekly show where we're going to be talking about some of the most interesting stories in the region.
Hi there, I'm Ivan Watson. I'm a CNN correspondent based here in Hong Kong, where I've lived and worked for more than 10 years. And Kunal, congratulations. We finally got you out of the newsroom on the microphones to share the kind of editorial discussions that we have every day with a wider audience.
Absolutely, and I'm very excited about this. And we've got a packed show, haven't we, Ivan?
We're going to go to Beijing first, hot on the heels of President Trump's visit to meet with Xi Jinping. And we're going to explore with our Beijing bureau chief what Chinese people think of Trump. Do they trust him?
And then we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the world of fast fashion and how that's impacting this one small city on the outskirts of Delhi in India.
All right, let's go.
Ivan, it's been a busy few weeks for China. President Trump was in Beijing to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping, and just a few days later, Vladimir Putin was in China as well.
Two heads of state visiting within a week of each other, so a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of red carpet as well. And that kind of got us thinking about how Chinese people are reacting and what their perceptions are, particularly of Trump, who's this enormously polarizing figure in the U.S. And he's had some strong things to say about China over the years.
Why don't we take a look at a brief snapshot of what they actually think?
This is some people in Beijing talking to our team in Beijing, filming on the streets there.
That's right.
我只是喜欢这个人的性格，我觉得他说话，很有个性。
给我的感觉来说的话，他在对外的这些政策，其实更多的激励了我们中国的自强自立。我还是挺喜欢这个总统的。
我当然希望两个国家能够达成共识，两个国家都往更好的方向发展。我们都希望能有更好的经济政策，能有更好的两国关系。
So there we have a smattering of kind of opinions, right? What we call vox pops. And I think what better way to dig deeper into this than to talk to our man in China. That's Stephen Zhang, the Beijing bureau chief.
Hey guys, very excited to be on your debut show.
I think that our viewers should really take a look at a piece that you wrote a short time ago on CNN.com about your firsthand observations, having reported from in China for 30 years now. Congratulations on that anniversary. And just to celebrate, we're going to show a picture of you from, I think, decades ago as a young reporter there.
That's the one with still some baby fat on the cheeks. I think that was 2001 when I first got sent back to the Beijing bureau by CNN. I mean, it was sobering, guys. Let me be honest, because I was thinking about the decades of my reporting on this very issue you guys talked about. And the first time I covered this for CNN was when I was an intern right here in Beijing back in 1998. So, almost 30 years, 28 years ago. But that was a long span of time.
You've just had President Trump in Beijing. We heard one man in Beijing, I believe, saying that he kind of likes his outsized personality. But President Trump has also said a lot of very insulting things about China over the years, though he was on very good behavior during his meeting with Xi Jinping just now.
His whole political brand was by criticizing China when he came to power.
Accusing China of ripping off the U.S. So how would Chinese people view him as opposed to maybe his predecessor, Joe Biden?
I think Trump is just such a fascinating character and so difficult to box in, right? But that's not, again, just from the Chinese perspective, from everyone. But for a lot of Chinese people, I think they're still very much fascinated by Trump, the personality, just because he's so so unconventional, so unfiltered in terms of things he says, even when they are against China. But of course, he also keeps saying how much he loves Xi Jinping and how China is such a great nation and things like that, right? So I think there's almost this dichotomy when it comes to how people view Trump. On one hand, especially I think in the run up to this to his second term in office during the campaign, he said a lot of things, as you mentioned, in terms of the trade wars and how China's ripping off the U.S. and
He used to call COVID-19 the Wuhan virus.
That's right. That's right. People take note of all that, but they just in a way chalk this up to Trump being Trump and didn't feel very personal about it. But on the other hand, though, the whole Trump unleashing chaos and divisions, not only in the US, but around the world, a lot of people see it here, intentionally or not, whatever he's doing has the result or consequence of propping up China on the global stage. So
what I find really fascinating, and we talk about this, Ivan, in the newsroom as well all the time, is how he is perceived on the Chinese social media. And I know we need to take that with a pinch of salt.
I think that nickname just speaks for itself, right? In terms of nation building Trump. Nation building Trump, because that is sort of like tongue-in-cheek or not so subtle jab at him for his alleged ability to prop up China on the global stage. And that is something I think it's going to be very difficult for him to shake at this stage.
I was just curious to know, what do Chinese people think about America?
Yeah, I think let's just say the taste has soured. We have seen global perceptions about the U.S., its government, its leadership have all kind of soured in a way in recent years. And I think China's no exception. But the thing about China, of course, is now China feels it's almost an equal, if not already surpassing the U.S. in many respects. So they have this level of confidence when they see the U.S., not only its political system, but also everything, the American culture and its products and everything. But I think, in a way, though, it is perhaps understandable given the transformation China itself has gone through, right, in the past 30 years or so. That is just one of those amazing stories I think I sometimes still feel privileged of having a front seat to witness. The thing about me was I actually was born and raised in Shanghai. I remember when I was growing up, obviously, in the late 1970s, 1980s, the early days of China's reform and opening era, if you will, there are two things somehow just stuck out, even all these years later, when I think of how people thought about America. The first thing was KFC. Because that was one of the first American phenomena, if you will, that come to China that really made such an impact. Because before that, nobody had heard of American fast food. When KFC came,
was that the first chain to come to China? Really?
It was. They were ahead of McDonald's actually. Yeah, and it was such a huge deal. I remember the first restaurant was in the middle of Shanghai, next to the People's Park. It was like an hours long wait before we could even step into the restaurant. But once you were in, the smell of fried chicken was a very kind of novel experience for all of us. Just, open up your senses. Back then, it was one of those things, a snapshot of the fascination, the sort of with American culture and anything American, if you will. And that was just something I think still all these years later resonated with a lot of people who grew up in that era.
Now, pick the chicken up with your fingers.
It wasn't just President Trump who was in Beijing recently. You also had the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, there. And the split screen I thought was so fascinating, Stephen, because both presidents were given almost the exact same welcoming ceremony. And yet there were such vast differences. This was Putin's 25th visit to China as leader of Russia, his 40th meeting with Xi Jinping. So I wonder, does that filter down at a time when many Chinese, their relationship with the U.S. has evolved? How are they viewing Russians right now?
I got to say, with Putin, the sentiment on the streets is probably more of a shrug, because for one thing, he's been on the scene for so long, right? He's always been taken for granted in the sense of he's always been there, and people just no longer feel the novelty factor in terms of a world leader coming to China, even when it comes to a country as important as Russia. But that's the other thing. People also still consider Russia an important country, but also very much a fading declining power, right? I think that is the sentiment from a lot of Chinese people, especially if you check social media as well. And Putin, in a way, is viewed as a strong man who can stand up to the U.S. That's that's won him some fans on Chinese social media. But he's also a controversial figure, especially after he invaded Ukraine. So in general, you just don't have the same level of interest and curiosity and fascination with Putin versus Trump.
Well, look, Stephen, I know that as we continue to watch China's evolution, you're going to be the man to turn to.
Thank you, guys.
That's Stephen Jiang, CNN's Beijing Bureau Chief. Great to see you, and we're going to be in touch for more stories down the road. Thanks, Stephen. All right, we're going to go to India next. Your home country, right?
Yep.
And what I understand we're going to look at is a project that you helped produce. And this takes a deep dive into the clothes on our backs and what happens to them when we're finished with them.
This is a project that I've been working with our Tokyo correspondent, Hanako Montgomery, and the team for several months now. And it is a deep dive into fast fashion, but also the impact it has on people. I mean, the scale of it, Ivan, is really scary. So more than 1 million tons of discarded clothing from around the world is shipped to this small Indian town on the outskirts of Delhi. And this is clothing from the US, from Japan, from China, and of course from India as well. And these are clothes that are supposed to be repurposed. But what we found out when the team was there on the ground is that through every step of this recycling process, there were devastating consequences, not just for the people that are employed there, but also for the city as a whole.
All right. Well, let's take a look at an excerpt from this report. And our colleague on the scene is, as you mentioned, Hanako Montgomery.
This is incredible. Look at this. This is unbelievable. This entire room is covered in clothing. A lot of the garments are collected from charity bins across places like the US, UK, and Japan, then sent thousands of miles across the world. Once here, they're first sorted by color, shredded, and spun into yarn. Then at another factory, they're woven into rugs and carpets to be sold back to the countries the clothes first came from. But our investigation found this fix comes at a sickening cost. I've only been at this small factory for 5 minutes, and as you can see, I'm already covered in dust. Most factories operate informally with little oversight. This man tells me he has a persistent cough, a symptom Dr. Shankar treats more and more.
If they inhale the same air on the daily basis, yes, it definitely shortens their lifespan.
Great to see you. Hanako, I was really struck by just the image of you in these mounds of clothes that presumably people have been wearing and then have discarded. What were your first impressions showing up in this place?
Great to see you too, guys. As soon as I enter that room, I mean, it's something I've never seen before, right? What was really surprising, I mean, I said it in my piece to camera, was just the fact that, I mean, there was not an inch of floor that you could see because it was all covered in clothing. And that was just at one factory. We visited several others and we saw similar scenes where it's just mountain after mountain of clothing.
Like in the piece, you can tell like it was very difficult breathing for you, but also, I mean, you and I were talking about it. I mean, it had quite an impact on the team as well.
One of our producers, Ayushi, I've gotten permission, by the way, from her, so I can mention this. But, while we were filming this story over the span of, I think, 5-6 days, on the very last day, she started developing this really bad cough, just a lot of irritation in her throat, itchy eyes, and she couldn't really take consistent deep breaths. And she actually had to, leave the shoot a day early to go to the doctor. We were exposed to this industry for a little less than a week. So the people working there day after day, spending decades theoretically in that same industry, breathing in that dust, that pollution, it can be very harmful for their health and potentially life-threatening, as we heard from doctors we spoke to.
Was there any solution that came up when you were trying to speak to the businesses or the government? Like, what did they say when you tried to contact them?
We reached out to several agencies within the government for a comment to sort of address the findings that we had. We didn't hear back from the government, though. Just a few days ago, actually, the government did come out with a statement. They did concede that when it comes to post-consumer textile waste, there are some gaps still in the system, that they're trying to work on it, that they're trying to make this industry a lot safer for people, but that it is taking a long time because of just how long this industry has been going on, and then also because of these more informal units that do, unfortunately, fly under the radar.
I think one of the most startling shots was what you talked about, Hanako, like going in that warehouse or that factory with those mountains of clothes. And I was just, I mean, as an Indian myself, like I was completely shocked that that's something that exists. Like,
and you helped set this project up in the first place.
Exactly. And that's why we did it, because we were like, this is something that is so relatable, but I don't think many people know about this, that this happens not very far from Delhi, right?
Do people in India know about this business?
I think, so we all know Panipat and there are other cities as like textile hubs, but we don't know that this is what is going on, the textile recycling and what scale it is at, and then what happens to these fabrics, how they're exported again back, like Hanako mentioned.
Hanako, it strikes me because 13 years ago, I did a story in China about a town that had a similar kind of system. It processed e-waste, and everybody in the area worked on this, your old laptops and TV screens and stuff like that, but it horribly polluted the countryside and the surrounding area. Now, there have been reporting that suggests that's changed since then. But it says a couple of things about kind of the global economy and the haves and the have-lesses, if you want to put it that way. But it also makes me think about what it's like an older coal mining community where everybody works in the coal mine and it makes everybody sick, but it's the only source of revenue and income for an entire community. And that's what you seem to have seen in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the common theme that we kept hearing from all the laborers and the workers that we interviewed was that this was the best job going, right? I mean, Panipat, with all its faults, I mean, the industry paid them well. They are often also laborers from other states in India. So, they're coming to Panipat to make money for their families to send back home. They might be mothers, they might be fathers, they have children to feed and to educate. So you really don't have the luxury of choice here, right? You are working in an industry that, again, pays well. And if you have to sacrifice your health for your children, I mean, I think, that's a sacrifice that a lot of parents are willing to make, unfortunately.
What's a kind of message that you'd like to share with consumers based on what you've seen?
Oh, gosh. I mean, as someone who's definitely purchased from fast fashion brands, it's really, it was alarming, right, to just see the amount of waste that we generate in a single month, in a single year. The fact that our shopping choices, the impact of that reverberates across the world is something that I would love for consumers watching this piece to really understand and, to absorb. I think the biggest takeaway here is just buy less, right? It's as simple as that. Buy less. Don't just buy what you want, but buy what you need.
Then I think that Kunal and I would probably fit into that category because I don't think
Absolutely.
either of us have bought a new shirt in probably years.
Are you sure? No.
Same.
You always look snazzy though, so clearly something's working. Yeah, but it's it's easy, right? I mean, if you go down any high street in a big city, it's like there's so many shops that you want to go into, that you want to buy tops from, you want to spruce up your outfit. I mean, consumerism is so front and center of our daily habits now, and it's really, really hard to break that cycle. But again, right, your shopping habits have consequences, not just for yourself and your wallet, but also for people like in Panipat.
Well said. Where can people watch Hanako's report?
They can watch it on CNN All Access, and it's also available on YouTube outside of the U.S.
Well, to Ayushi and yourself and the rest of the team, great work on this, and I really look forward to whatever you guys dig up, whatever story you bring to us next.
Thanks so much, guys.
Kunal, before we go, I wanted to flag a story that I saw that our colleague Chris Lau wrote. You can find it on CNN.com in our travel section. And it was about a local entrepreneur here in Hong Kong who's growing coffee beans here. And that's kind of striking because this is one of the world's most densely populated cities. And here you have this guy who's putting something out, and he's calling it Lantau bean because it's grown on Lantau Island, one of the many islands that makes up this city.
I'm not surprised at all that you were reading a story about coffee. You were addicted to it.
I am very much addicted to it. I love coffee. And that kind of highlighted something that I've seen in my decade plus living and traveling and working across Asia, which is just this, what looks like a coffee renaissance. If you go to Seoul, you can't walk 10 feet without hitting a coffee shop. I've seen local, not just Starbucks, but local kind of franchise proliferating across Hong Kong or in China. And there's been a growth in coffee consumption in India, your home country, as well. And it's all the more striking because this is a region that is traditionally a tea drinking region.
That's right. I mean, Asia is predominantly a tea drinking society. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there has been almost like a coffee revolution, especially among the younger generation. I mean, we're seeing coffee raves, and like you said, there are a lot of cafes and coffee production in India, especially in the south of India. But yeah, we're seeing that around the region.
What about you?
Well, I'm a bit more traditional in that sense. I'm a tea drinker.
You're not on team coffee, huh?
No, I understand where people come from when they say they need their caffeine and they're addicted to coffee, but yeah, I'm still very much a tea drinker.
And why is tea important to you?
I mean, for me, it's more than a beverage, right? For me, it's something that is quite personal. When I go to India, I have tea with my family every day. It's a ritual almost. So I'll have it once in the morning after breakfast with my parents, where we're going to discuss, what the day has to bring, and we're going to discuss what's in the news. And then I'll have it once in the evening when we come back from work, just kind of like wrapping up the day and what it was like. But for me, that is a really, really important part of my day. I mean, I would go as far as saying that is the best part of my day.
Well, that I think is probably going to be the most beautiful thing I hear today. And it's convinced me maybe to give tea another try.
You should definitely do it. Why don't you come over?
All right. One day in India with your parents, I hope. That's going to do it for our program for today. Thank you for watching, for listening, and feel free to reach out to us over email at meanwhileinasia@cnn.com.
And I think that is our show for today, our very first episode. Congrats.
Congratulations, and hopefully we'll see you next week.